another introduction. Sitting in a bigger chair.
I am sitting outside with my Ironhead Sportster. I pulled it out of the shop to do this video outside. And Kenneth, who's over there. Come here, Kenneth.
Okay.
Tell everybody hey.
Hi.
Okay, Daddy's turn. And today we wanted to talk about this piece of paper right here, which is all of my maintenance for this bike since I have owned it. I just went through all my receipts, totaled them all up, and put it on this. And I wanted to make this video kind of for three reasons. The first is I'm kind of in a lull right now as far as working on motorcycles is concerned. This bike, my Evo Sportster, both don't have any problems right now. I don't need to work on them, so therefore I'm not making any videos about them. The shovel head that I have is on hiatus. I've just pushed that to the back burner for a lot of different reasons, and so therefore, again, nothing to work on there. That other Evo Sportster in there that I'm building a chopper out of, I need to get back to that, but I've been busy with some other stuff that's just been higher priority than that bike. And that 85 Ironhead Sportster that I bought to flip, well, I've got it up for sale right now. It is running, riding, shifting, stopping, you know, it's for sale as like a rideable titled project. And I got thinking and I was like, well, I'd like to make a video this week, so what should I make it about? And then it's like, you know what, this would be fun. I was doing some paperwork anyways. I was like, let me just round up all my receipts for the Ironhead, and we can talk about, you know, the myth of are Ironheads super duper expensive to maintain? If you ride one of these regularly, is it going to break all the time? And are you going to spend a fortune keeping it running? And then also just kind of try and maybe give a little education to people as far as like what a realistic cost of A, getting a bike back on the road if it sat for a while like this one did, and then B, keeping it on the road once you do get it on the road. Okay, so let's jump right into it. And we're just gonna go from the top. And I inherited this bike June 14th of 2022. It was given to me by my aunt. This was her motorcycle. She owned it for a very long time and rode it all over the place. This bike has been to Sturgis, it has been to Oregon, it has dipped its tires in the Pacific Ocean, and it has been very well maintained over its life by my uncle before he passed away, and it was taken well care of, but she just wasn't riding it anymore. It was sitting in her garage for several years. She has a newer bike that she was riding more than this one, and so it just needed some TLC to get back on the road. So let's start with that. When I inherited this bike, it had 12,000 miles on it. Currently it has 15,774. So I've put almost 4,000 miles on this bike in about 2 years, which doesn't really sound like a lot, but keep in mind that it took me about 2 months to get this bike back on the road. I was just kind of working on it, you know, at night and on the weekends in my spare time and really taking my time with it. And it also sat down for a number of months last fall and over this past winter, kind of just over something really stupid. We'll talk about that in a minute. And of course, I have multiple other motorcycles that I ride, so my riding mileage over the year gets spread out across multiple bikes. I might put 2,000 on this one, 3,000 on that one, you know, 2,000 on this one, whatever. My total yearly motorcycle mileage generally ends up coming in like the 8,000 to 10,000 mile a year range, but it's spread out across multiple bikes. Anyways, let's start with what it cost me to get this bike back on the road. And as I talk about this, I'm kind of sitting off to the side of the frame, and we're gonna put up prices over here, and I might even put up some pictures of stuff of what I worked on, like Vanna White style right here. In order to initially get this bike back on the road, I did the following. Like I said, it had been sitting for a while, and rubber stuff was your like major concern here. So tires were the biggest, you know, first thing to go for. I put 2 tires on, front and rear, Metzler 888s, ME 888s, and I also purchased 2 cans, tubes, whatever you call it, of Ride-On brand tire sealant, which is also a tire balancer. I mounted these tires myself, and I don't have a balancing machine. I had read good reviews about this stuff, that they sort of dynamically balance the tires as it rotates. What you got there, Kenny?
3.
3 of them. Bring them over here so we can see. Wow. Go find some more.
Okay, I just...
And so I use that Ride-On sealant in these tires, and so far it seems to be doing fine. They ride smooth. The total cost of tires and the Ride-On sealant slash balancer was $400.25. I put 2 new valve stems into this bike for $15.47 total. All 4 wheel bearings and wheel bearing cups, so 2 in the front, 2 in the rear, $52.98 there, and then all 4 wheel seals, again, front and rear, $24.98, which brings our total for doing tires and wheel bearings up to $493.68. Now, that gets the bike safely rolling, but it didn't really run. It kind of sort of ran when I got it, but not really. I replaced the spark plugs in it, $12.98. Rebuilt the carburetor, so carb kit was $23.49. Put a battery in it, $95.49. 4 quarts of motor oil for $45.96. A quart of primary oil for $11.27, and an oil filter for $19.90. So let's just call our total get it back running tune-up was $209.09. And then additional just kind of stuff where I replaced like oil lines, fuel lines, so hoses, hose clamps, and then just like some polish and cleaner to sort of shine the bike back up since it was a little grungy from sitting for so long, was another $78.26, which brings our total initial cost of just bringing this bike sort of back from the dead, getting it ready to safely go up and down the road reliably, to $781.03. And I'm going to pause right here and just say this bike is really nice. This is probably one of the nicest late Ironhead Sportsters I've ever seen in person. I don't know what it would really sell for, but I'm never going to sell it. The condition I got it in, it was maybe like a $3,000 bike, roughly. And then I put, like I just said, another almost 800 bucks into it just to get it on the road. Yes, Kenna?
This is cool, but this is awesome.
Good. High five.
What?
Bloop. Okay, have fun, dude. So that initial 800 bucks brings us to probably late July, early August. I pretty much spent the second half of June and all of July working on this bike. And that got me to a point where I could, actually ride the bike. And I rode the bike for the month of August pretty much without any issues, but in September, the bike left me on the side of the road. I had a carburetor float height issue, and I also had a dead battery because the generator went out on this bike. So I ended up putting a new Cycle Electrics DGV 5000 generator on this motorcycle to replace the one that was already on it. And I bought the generator with voltage regulator combo. That set me back $456.89, which brings our running total up to $1237.92. And that got me through September of 2022. In early October of 2022, I had an issue with this motorcycle spitting and sputtering and backfiring through the carburetor and not wanting to run, and it just got worse and worse and worse until the bike finally would not run at all. And that kept the bike down for almost 2 weeks before I finally figured out what it was. And the little tit on the timing cup behind the points cover, which you can't see, it's out of the camera, for the electronic ignition had broken. So the timing cup was just barely grabbing and spinning around sometimes through that magnetic pickup. That was an easy fix and very quick, but it took me a while to figure out. The timing cup cost me a total of $22.28. And then about a week later, after the Congregation show up in Charlotte, I rode this bike up there for that. It's a really awesome vintage motorcycle show here in Charlotte. I locked up the back brake on this bike, and The fix for this was just to rebuild my rear master cylinder. There was just some trash in it that was covering the return port, and that was all that was wrong with it. And that cost me $21.95, bringing our running total to $1282.15. And this actually ended up setting this bike down from October, like the end of October, all the way into January of 2023. So I missed out on a lot of miles I could have been riding on this bike because I thought that the rear caliper had locked up, and I pretty much could not find one anywhere. I looked and looked and looked, and it was like unobtainium. I ordered one through a place and waited like 6 weeks to get it, and it never showed up. I finally got my money back from them, and I was just really discouraged about the bike because I felt like, well, crap, this is something, you know, I have to have back brakes, and I can't find the part, and I really want to ride the bike. So I kind of just pushed it up into the building and left it there over the winter and worked on some other stuff. But when I got back to it in January, I realized, you know, I didn't do my due diligence in troubleshooting it. All I needed to do was rebuild the rear master cylinder, which is what I did. So in January of 2023, after the bike had been sitting from October of 2022, I rebuilt the rear master cylinder and I serviced the bike again. The total for that service was $77.13. I also adjusted the valves. And that brings the running total to $1,359.28, which is actually the grand total for this bike up until today. I am filming this in September of 2023, and from January to today, I've put about another 2,000 miles on this bike. It's almost ready for another service and another valve adjustment, and I haven't done anything to it other than just put gas in it and ride it. So that's kind of where I'm at on this motorcycle. You know, close to $1,400 in getting it back on the road and just maintaining it once it was on the road. And I really don't think that's too bad. I guess I could probably do some math to figure out the actual miles that I've ridden versus the dollars that I've spent and come up with a $1 per mile maintenance cost for this Ironhead. Maybe I'll do that. I think I will. And we'll put a magic number up on the screen.
I know.
And I don't know what that number is, and guess what? I don't really care. I don't think that's a crazy amount of money to sink into an old bike. For me, it's totally worth it, and if my sort of yearly maintenance costs continue like what they're at right now, I'm less than $100 in this bike this year for maintenance. You know, that's just as good as an Evo, in all honesty.
I know how much he should sell it for.
I'm not selling it. I'll never sell this bike. This will be your bike one day.
The red one.
The red one?
I know how much he should sell that one for.
How much?
$.
$55?
No. This means $900.
$900. Wow, that would be really cheap. Finally, I just wanted to say one last thing about this particular Ironhead at least. I don't really think it deserves the reputation of being unreliable. I don't really think many Ironheads deserve that reputation either. The reason I think many Ironheads get that reputation, just Ironheads in general, as being high maintenance, low reliability bikes, is that for a really long time, these were really cheap bikes to buy. You could buy running, riding Ironheads for like $1,000. Those days are pretty much over. However, we are still sort of reaping the repercussions of decades of neglect and poor owners and people who just bodged and hacked these bikes together. And any bike really is only as good as the last couple of people who have owned it. And if you buy one that's a complete basket case that's been owned by a tweaker, you're gonna sink way more money into it than I've put into this one, which was owned by someone who really knew what they were doing and took really good care of it. But with that being said, these are still awesome bikes. This one has been extremely reliable once I kind of got all those initial little bugs and kinks worked out of it. And I would get on this thing and ride it all the way back up the East Coast to go visit my aunt in Connecticut and show her old bike again. Actually, that's something I plan on doing, you know, fairly soon. But that's really it for this episode. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Drop a comment below if you own an Ironhead, and just kind of say like what you spend on maintenance for your bike. I would like to do this episode again, come back to it later, and just look at, you know, in another year, what have I spent on this bike. And I think it would be fun to do one about my shovel head too, though I can tell you already right now, that bike, the shovel head, is a basket case, and I have sunk a small fortune into that piece of junk. So that one will be very different than this one. Anyways, I'm done talking. We're leaving. No. Kenneth has something to tell you before we go. Come on, Kenneth.
You remember that time when we made a video and then there was that corn?
Oh yeah, the corn coming out of the exhaust pipes of that blue bike.
I'm a tree monster.
You're a tree monster? All right, tree monster. Ah! Tell him bye.
Bye.
Bye.